Hello everyone, welcome to the next section of this SAP basis training. In this particular session, we will learn about client comparison and maintenance of client adjustments. The client comparison can be compared locally between one SAP client to another SAP client to a remote client within the same system itself. That also will be an internal RFC call, or you can also do a comparison between two different SAP systems. Meaning to say, using RFCs, you can also compare the settings from one system to another separate SAP system. Let's say in a situation where you have multiple productive systems and you have customizing which may happen from one system to another productive system in a different way. In some situation you want to compare these two productive systems, then it will be quite useful. This particular functionality will be quite useful to compare these two different productive systems. So in order to use the client comparison, we have a transaction code which is SCU0. Using this client comparison transaction, you can compare a client from a reference client, such as for example SAP own client 000. Let's say you did some changes, you want to compare the changes from the standard SAP client. So you can do a comparison with client 000. Then you will have an idea of what are all the changes which is being carried out in the present client you are customizing or which is in production. Or let's say you may also have something like a golden client, okay, which you want to compare the changes from one client to this golden client. That also possible. So if you have a golden client, you can compare the changes from this golden client to the development or quality client which you are doing customizing. So in order to execute the client comparison, you will use the transaction code SCU0. Here you can define the objects and you can find the differences with reference to the table entries, for example. So you have quite a lot of options here. To select the object to compare the client comparison, you can use the project oriented approach. This project oriented approach is basically the project which you should have created in the SPRO, which we already seen. We can create project in SPRO. So if you use that project, you can use the project oriented approach where it will give you the options to compare the entire project. When you select this and say create, then it will ask you to select the project. You can compare the entire project, or you can also compare the TRs, for example, within the particular project. Otherwise, this client comparison tool also have functionality. You can select object manually. That also quite useful functionality. You can select the objects manually to do the comparison. To start the comparison, that means to execute the comparison, please remember you need to create the component using the create options and execute the comparison in background processing. You can also do it in the foreground, or you can also do it in the background. If the selection criteria is quite big, then it is always better to use background process. And it also have quite a lot of other functionality. You can go by SAP project reference IMG, and you can also go by choose component. You can select specific components which you want to compare, or you can also compare all components, customizing price list and transport and business configuration set, that is the BC sets. BC sets means it's like a transport. You can get packages from SAP for other third parties using BC sets. you can activate the BC sets in your systems. So in that kind of cases, you can also compare the settings based on the BC set. Also we can compare using yearly distribution group, which we know already what is yearly distribution group. We can also use that, or we can also do manual selections. Manual selections means in the case of, let's say, you have a view which is already available. For example, uh, we did the country code creation in the previous exercises. So when you created a country code, we had a view which was edited. If you remember, we had three different tables, and all the three different tables were put together. We had a view for the specific customizing. So you can select the specific view and compare from one system to another system. That is basically you narrow down, drill down to specific objects that you wanted to compare. So once you select any of these options, basically you will compare with the different system. In general cases, we rarely compare with the same system until unless you want to compare with client 000. In that cases, then you need to select the RFC destinations. When you select create, and you'll start the comparison, and that time it will ask you to select the RFC destination. Then you can create RFC destination, or if you have an existing RFC destination, select the existing RFC destination to start the comparison. So once the comparison is finished, then you will get a result something like this, where you can see if there is a difference in the comparison. If there is a difference, then it will say not equal to. That means there is a difference in the objects. If it is equal to, that means both are same. That you will get these options using the next functionality, where you can use the adjusting functionality in order to adjust the clients if based on your comparison. So you don't need to switch it back from different systems. You can adjust the client in the SC use 0. Adjust the client in means anyway we are doing some changes of customizing changes. So the system which you are executing, if you want to adjust the uh, settings in the present client which you are executing SCU0, where you can adjust from this transaction code itself. We will also see that in the system how it's going to work. It's a quite useful option. You can compare it and you can make the necessary modification. As I said, the customizing and comparising is two different things. However, you can call this customizing from here. That's what it means. So the operation itself is different. However, SAP allows you to do some modification in this transaction itself. Maybe we can go to the system and see how to do a comparison. Let's go to our ECQ system. So from ECQ system, we will use RFC functionality to compare with ECC system. Let's log into ECQ system. Let's say SAPstar. In general, using SAPstar may not be a good idea because you will not be able to do the adjustments in using SAPstar. So it is always better to use the named users. But however, let's try it. You go to SCU0, the transaction. Then you will come to this comparison of cross system viewer tool. Here you can see IMG activity. Here you can see project IMG. You can either use project IMG when you say create. Then you need to select the project. If you say select the project, then you should be able to see the project what we have created. I think the project what we have created is not in ECC. Let me log into not in ECQ. I think we did the customizing in ECC system. So let's go to ECC system. SCU0. Here, let's say create. Here, yes, this is the project which we have created previously. You can select this, then you can start the comparison. So once you say you want to compare, say new comparison, let's say create. Okay, then you select the component, which system you want to compare. Then you need to select the run ID, where you need to specify which component, which system you are going to select, for example, but this is not a valid entry. We say ECQ. Basically, we cannot use SAP star for comparison. So you can use this project IMG, otherwise you can also use project reference IMG to create a new comparison ID, where you can do a total comparison, client specific and cross client comparison. You can select the RFC connection in order to do the comparison if it is in a remote system. So let's, and you can also see choose by application components. When you say create, it will give you the components. You can select the specific components which you want to compare. So based on this one, you will be able to compare based on the selected criteria. Let's say select some of the components. Okay, then you have that particular component will be compared. Okay, this will take some time, so you have to always run it in the background, or you can also use manual. So let's do one thing. From ECQ system, let's call the ECC system and do the comparison. So let's go to ECQ system. This is our ECQ system. So here we will do a manual selection. Let's say create. We will select the object before which we have used for customizing, that is the T005 table. So it is V underscore, this one, V underscore 5005 base. If I say star F4, then you should be able to get the list. So from the list also you can select, let's say base. Then we need to select the type, okay, the view type. So this is basically a view, but it's not a table. If it's a table, you can leave it blank. You have cluster table and all this different kind of tables. Let's say it's a view. Say execute. Now we can create a comparison ID if we want. Let's say country code. Now we need to select the RFC connection. So we already created RFC connection for the client copy. Let's use the same RFC connection, which will take you directly to the ECC system. So let's use this one. So here we can also use total comparison, means that it will execute in the foreground mode. If you want to execute in the background mode, you can execute in the background mode. Otherwise, you can also select object overview. If you select object overview, it will give all the objects. From there, you can select the specific objects. Okay, so let's do total comparison. I think it's quite small. Yeah, it's come quite fast because it's only 3 tables. It's a very small change. Here you can see this particular comparison, it says not equal to with the red mark. If I select this legend, you can see here this is open, in progress, this is complete. This is right now the status is open, it's not completed. Okay, then the comparison status. This is view table is not yet compared. If it is equal, then the view tables are identical. If it's a equal with the bracket, identical but structural difference are exist. Then if it is not equal to, then the are not identical. Then if it is not equal to with the bracket, then it is not identical and differences in the structure are still exist. Then if you get the symbol like this, and this comparison is not possible at all. At the moment our status says this one, that it is not identical. So let's see, if I want to see what is not identical in this particular comparison, then you can select this. Then you go to edit, let's say interact copy. Here you will say restrict number of entries to compare. Do you want to restrict? You say no. Say no changes for user start SAP star is allowed. So we cannot do any changes here, basically, which will give you the display, but we cannot do any changes because of SAP star. You can anyway display it here. What is the difference? So right now if you see, everything is fine. Let's see where is the difference. Here you can see two entries which we have created. It's not the standard entries which is having the difference. Okay, difference from the system ECC. So let's create another one user. Maybe we can create SAP basis user in ECQ. SAP basis initial profile. I will assign SAP all and SAP new. Save. Let me exit from here. Let's go to ECQ again using the user SAP basis. Okay, now let me execute the SCU0, then manual comparison, create this object, type is view, execute. Let's say this is the RFC destination and say total compare. Now start comparing only a one view, so it is okay to execute in foreground. Now if I go select this and go to interact copy, that means we are going to adjust the entries, we are going to clear the differences. Say no. Now we did not get the error message, and you also can see one more button which is called adjust. So if let's assume that you have a text which is different, let's say for example here there's some small changes, you wanted to adjust that one, then you select this and go to adjust. Here you can see this is basically the format of table entries. From this table v underscore t005 underscore bis, that the view which also contains different table entries, and you can adjust it here. If let's say you want to delete, you can also delete. Delete entry, then it will delete. If you select delete, it will delete the entry, or if you want to modify it, you can still modify it. Let's say entry, you can modify the entries here. Okay. However, if you are changing any modification, you should be in that system. If it is in the remote system, then you should be in the remote system to do this for modification. Okay, this is about client comparison. Okay, then next one is client maintenance settings, which we already know. The client maintenance is done in SCC4. The the options which we are discussing is protection level 2, overwrite, no external availability. So the options which we are discussing here is mm, the protection of client copier and client comparison tool. You can also protect the protective system from client comparison and client adjustment tools. So using this parameter setting, you will be able to protect the client from client comparison and client copier. The first option is protection level 0, that is uh, no restriction. That means it is allowed to do the client comparison and client copier. But if you have protection level 1, that is no overwriting, this protection levels ensures that client cannot be overwritten by the client copy program. So using this no overwrite options, this will protect the client, or this protection level ensures the client cannot be overwritten by the client copy program. This setting can be used in customizing is performed in the client that contains critical setting that data should not be overwritten. Then we can use this protection level. Then the second one is protection level 2. So this protection level make sure that you are not overwritten, or also this will also protection you this will also protect your system or the client from read access in case of client copying in the landscape or from this specific system. That is about the client maintenance, client setting, which is related to client copy and client comparison. And okay, with this, we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.